Welcome, listeners, to another episode of the Panel Pals, the comic book podcast for thinkers. We're your hosts, Jack Stewartson.
And Diane Hitchings.
Diane, what's new with you these days?
You know, not a lot. It decided to start raining today, so that's classic BC. Other than that, my entire family decided to visit me because I live in BC, and it's actually nice most of the time when it's not raining, so that's fun.
Certainly greener than over... Well, I say that, but we just got a nice dump of rain, too, and we got nice weather now.
I have confirmation from my family that it is a lot greener here. It actually feels like summer. Ooh! But comic-wise, I'm just keeping on. I don't have a show until August, so I am just motoring along, doing pages. Gonna make some more posters soon for the upcoming shows. Not much. How about you?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I'm gearing up, trying to get another book out by September. The 32-page. I'm
nice.
8 pages in, so hopefully that'll wrap up.
Yeah, and I'm like, I'm hoping my book will be ready by September. I'm just 260 pages in of who knows.
Hey, you got a legit graphic novel going on. That's exciting.
Yeah, it'll be done at some point in time. Hopefully by September. That would be awesome. But
we always
look
forward to the deadline.
Yes.
Are you ready to talk about Superman number 178 from March 2002?
Oh boy, am I ever.
Now, I'm going to preface this very early. The reason why I picked this book, this is one of my first 6 comics that I ever read or owned. My granddad bought this for me. We had cousins coming over from out of town, so we would make this big trip to the West Edmonton Mall. So this was picked up at the Comics Kings, rest in peace, from the West Edmonton Mall, way back in 2002. In 1812, the soul of the United States was changing. British naval superiority and trade restrictions between Napoleonic France and the United States threatened the stability of the then only 36-year-old American project. Moreover, expansion into northern and western territories were facing resistance from British-allied indigenous bands and tribes. The freedom offered by the New World was beginning to feel a lot more claustrophobic. Therefore, in order to propel and defend America's manifest destiny, on June 18, 1812, President James Madison would declare war on the British Empire and all her colonies, especially the neighboring border of Canada. Lasting until the signing of the Treaty of Ghent on Christmas Eve of 1814, today the war is largely considered a stalemate. U.S. victories in New Orleans and Niagara were met by the burning of Washington and the freeing of an estimated 4,000 slaves. By the war's end, there would be no significant exchange of territory between the U.S. and Canada. However, the U.S. would celebrate the war's end as a victory and the beginning of a bipartisan era of good feelings, as well as a second independence from the British. During the war, British blockades hit United States supply lines hard, especially in the Northeast Corridor and into New England. Legend has it, beef barrels supplied by New York meatpacker Samuel Wilson were celebrated like miracles upon their arrival as rations for American troops. It suggested that barrels marked U.S. were jokingly conflated as being from Uncle Samuel, rather than their designation as United States government property. The authenticity of this account is up for dispute, as references to an Uncle Sam as military jargon appears as early as 1810. But the legend would spread, and soon Uncle Sam would become the metaphorical national personification. Sam wasn't the first of America's national mascots. Characters like Columbia and Brother Jonathan, beatific personifications of a free, Protestant America, predate Uncle Sam by a half-century at least. But what Brother Jonathan and Columbia had in divine grandiosity, Uncle Sam made up for in personality. Depictions of the stoic, wise, and whimsical Sam made the character a favorite of political cartoonists. The deliberate depiction of Uncle Sam posing for the U.S. government in the allegorical novel The Adventures of Uncle Sam in Search After His Lost Honor by Frederick Augustus Fidfatty cemented the metaphor. Gradually, the appearance of Sam would standardize as a white-haired, billy-goat-chinned, slender figure in a red, white, and blue suit and a star-spangled top hat, as solidified in J.M. Flagg's iconic I Want You World War I recruitment posters. In 1940, the the soul of the United States was changing. A Second World War was on the horizon as hostilities between the US and Japan were on the rise. Hitler continued to threaten the sovereignty of America's European allies. On the home front, Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal fought tooth and nail to help the working class recover from economic collapse after the Great Depression. Modern conveniences and technologies were able to deliver a new brand of consumer class hero. Radio, movies, newspapers, and of course comics gave birth to pop culture, which in turn replaced oral folk traditions. The likes of Bob Hope, Gary Cooper, and of course Superman became just as important to the American canon as Paul Bunyan or Johnny Appleseed. Superman's debut in 1938's Action Comics #1 took the world by storm, and by 1940 the franchise had expanded into merchandise, a daily comic strip, and a popular radio show. But this new cultural tradition was far more litigious than the last. DC Comics, publishers and owners of Superman, were quick to protect any apparent infringement on their intellectual property. Anyone who published a character who was perceived to be a Superman clone was quickly hit with a cease and desist. One such case was Fox Feature Syndicate's Wonder Man character, created by the prestigious Eisner-Iger studio, co-operated by one Will Eisner. During the lawsuit that followed, Eisner would testify against Fox, claiming he was instructed to copy Superman as closely as possible. Fox would retaliate by dropping all Eisner-Iger contracts, owing approximately $3,000. That would be $62,000 today with inflation. Luckily, Eisner was as fast at making deals as he was at drawing comics. Eisner and Iger managed to get a contract with the then-new publisher, Quality Comics, who were looking to expand into all original material instead of syndicated reprints. Rather than risk running into further legal trouble with DC, Eisner and Iger diversified their influences when inventing new features. And when commissioned to conceive the cover lead for July 1940's National Comics #1, Eisner would adapt the public domain image of Flag's Uncle Sam to the superhero genre. Predating Captain America by 9 months, this Uncle Sam would be among the first of a swath of long john-wearing super patriots. Sam was the star feature of 45 issues of National Comics, as well as 8 issues of his own self-titled spin-off. Covers often depicted him towering over Nazi and Japanese infantry alike, smashing artillery and men like toy soldiers in the sandbox. A decline in comic sales overall led to Quality having to liquidate its assets, and in 1956, DC Comics would buy up the rights to most of Quality's trademarks. Much of Quality's titles were cancelled in the process. However, as the superhero genre crept back into popularity through the 60s and 70s, DC saw fit to revive a half dozen of the World War II era Quality-branded characters, including Uncle Sam. Justice League of America #107 saw the titular crew of DC favorites team up with the Uncle Sam-led Freedom Fighters on Earth X to battle in a Second World War which never ended. Sam would remain a background player throughout various DC Universe events, including the infamous 1986 Crisis on Infinite Earths and into the post-crisis continuity. In 2002, the soul of the United States was changing. While the neoliberalism of the 90s brought a sense of social stability, the rubber banding of the Bush-Cheney administration, as well as the devastating and sobering 9/11 attacks, left an ugly stain on the psyche of the American people. The debt and deficit of the country rose exponentially in the years following, as did paranoia and distrust in the government. The U.S. entered the second year in their nearly 3-decade-long war in Afghanistan in order to seek not-so-righteous justice on an enemy the average citizen couldn't rightfully identify. If it was going to get itself out of its mire, the American people were going to have to face even more change. Just as America was changing, so too was Superman. Beginning in 1991, the 4 main Superman books, that being Superman, Action Comics, Adventures of Superman, and Superman the Man of Steel, shared overarching storylines in a television-style writer's room, headed by Dan Jurgens and Louise Simonson. This culminated in the multi-year, multi-part Death and Return of Superman saga, which saw Superman face death, a crisis in identity, fluctuating superpowers, and marriage. By the dawn of the new millennium, the Superman books were feeling exhausted, especially after the failed launch of a fifth Superman title. It would take more than flash-in-the-pan status quo shakeups and edgy redesigns if DC wanted the Man of Tomorrow to be as relevant in the 21st century as he was in the 20th. He's a bigger-than-life hero. That's the way I draw him. That's what Ed McGuiness said in an interview with Wizard magazine in March of 2000, after being hired as the artist on the main Superman title. Hot off a tryout on Wildstorm's Superman-esque Mr. Majestic, McGuiness was brought on board to differentiate the Man of Steel from the usual DC house style, as part of a youthification initiative across all the Superman books. McGuiness employed bubbly, manga-influenced art as contrast to the stiffer look of the 80s and 90s. McGuiness was teamed with critically acclaimed Superman for All Seasons scribe, as well as Teen Wolf and Commando screenwriter Jeph Loeb. Loeb's collaborations with Tim Sale at both DC and Marvel had garnered him a reputation as an introspective character writer, which editorial hoped to employ to boost the title's cultural cachet. In practice, Superman 2000 is much the same as 80s and 90s Superman, just with a more contemporary coat of paint. The Clark Kent and Superman dyad would continue to deal with soap opera-style plots, problems in his marriage to Lois Lane, the possibility of his dual identity being exposed, health concerns with his parents. Meanwhile, new escalating alien threats like Imperiex, as well as returning and reinvented Silver Age foes, would match Superman physically in cinematic, widescreen action set pieces. Then, the big gimmick happened. In an ongoing plot thread, Lex Luthor, Superman's greatest foe, would run for office in the 2000 American presidential election as an independent opposite George W. Bush and Al Gore. This wouldn't be the first time a comic book character would campaign for the Oval Office. Both Alfred E. Newman and Howard the Duck have Lex beat by decades. However, in a shocking upset, Luthor would win the election, officially taking Bush's spot as the 43rd President of the United States in the DC universe. This status quo would last all through Loeb and McGuinness's run, with this sinister oligarch as head of state hanging over not just the Superman titles, but the entire DC line. Superman 178 sees the titular Man of Steel enjoying a glass of milk, a slice of pie, and some cheese at the grand reopening of the Smallville General Store, courtesy of Ma and Pa Kent. As Superman greets the growing line of patrons to the event, a figure bathed in red, white, and blue disrobes his jacket and rolls up his sleeves, before sucker punching the last son of Krypton. It's revealed that the muscular figure is none other than Uncle Sam, manipulated by the state of the current administration. Superman talks the spirit of the country down, and after a chat at some national monuments, they decide to team up whenever they inevitably confront President Luthor. Meanwhile, in the Oval Office, Lex has learned a sinister secret from the U.S. surveillance apparatus, that Clark Kent is Superman. And now, the year is 2025. The soul of the United States is changing. A geriatric oligarch is once again running the nation. As her empire declines, America once again looks to expand, threatening the sovereignty of its neighbor, Canada. And where are its national icons? Uncle Sam made a surprise appearance at this year's Super Bowl, portrayed by Samuel L. Jackson running color commentary over Kendrick Lamar's halftime performance. Superman is planned to make his cinematic re-debut this July, as part of a larger Summer of Superman media push. But are these figures as relevant in this century as they once were last century? Who or what is their replacement? And is their battle in Superman 178 as prescient today as it was in 2002? Diane, what did you think of this issue of Superman?
I mean, there are a couple things while reading it that I had questions about. I will say, when I was reading it and realized that Superman got punched by Uncle Sam, I laughed out loud. I did not expect it. That came out of... Because, okay, so I have not read... This is not the first comic in this series. There's continuity that exists before this issue, yes?
Correct.
Okay, so I went into this blind. I didn't know what the story was. I didn't know what was happening. I was like, cool, okay, I guess Lex Luthor is president now. And I did not know, obviously, that Uncle Sam has been a character, a comic book character, and also in, DC stuff as well. So just out of the blue, Uncle Sam showing up, hilarious to me. I was like, okay, now I know what direction we're going in.
That's the joy of these... especially American superhero comics, is that they're not afraid to poach folk characters or mythological characters. I mean, Thor, for instance, right? Thor's not an original concept. He's poached Norse mythology. But you get all of these, fairy tale characters and stuff hanging out with Superman and Batman. I love that. I love the quilt that is DC and Marvel Comics.
Yeah. I mean, I should have assumed after seeing the cover with the American flag and the eagle on Superman's shoulder, I should have known what we were getting into. But no, silly me.
Yeah, totally.
It's very on the nose, I'll say that. But I mean, I guess if this is supposed to be for young people, maybe you have to be very on the nose and not be subtle with your imagery.
I think this comes from a period of time, like post 9/11 America is so weird, where they don't, like 9/11 held such cultural, I don't want to say cachet, but like it was hanging over everyone's heads.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about, you ever see that Tobey Maguire, any of those Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies? Okay, they all end, Spider-Man poses in front of like the American flag. All three of them, he poses in front of the American flag. I don't associate Spider-Man with patriotism. It's like really weird.
No. Yeah, I will say, once I got to the Uncle Sam part, I scrolled back up to check what year this was from. And I was like, yes, post 9/11. I assume that this was directly in response to that, is what it felt like.
Well, especially they go to Topeka, Kansas, and they're like, I guess previous to this issue, there was this big crossover where aliens invaded and they blew up Kansas. But like Clark mentions all of these like Oklahoma City and the World Trade Center, all of these national disasters. We have to stay steadfast in front of these bad things that happen to us.
Yeah. Question. Do you think that comics, and or specifically this comic, can like address those sort of serious issues correctly, or does it feel slightly goofy? Or do you think like this is a good way to like make younger audiences like feel like nationalism and that we're in this together? What do you think?
So I think like American superhero comics specifically have a history of doing this, dating back to World War II. Like in my intro, I mentioned Uncle Sam National Comics, right? It's called National Comics, for God's sakes. But all of these covers were sort of propaganda of, you would have Superman or Captain America fighting not just on the home front, but on the front lines of World War II, like fighting Japanese and German soldiers. That disappeared. Obviously, at the war's end, you kind of didn't need to do that anymore. But I feel like there must have been a push post 9/11 to start having superheroes address this. I'm thinking of, there was an issue of Spider-Man immediately after 9/11 where it's Spidey at the debris of the World Trade Center. He's like trying to rescue people, and Captain America shows up in that, and a couple other Marvel characters. So this kind of fits in that same mold. Yeah. It totally doesn't work though.
Yeah. Unfortunately, what this makes me think of is, I went and looked it up quickly. There is a romance film called Remember Me from 2010. And the twist ending is that the guy, I think, dies in 9/11.
I think it's Keanu Reeves, and he was at the World Trade Center.
I think it's Robert Pattinson.
Is it Robert Pattinson?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And so, unfortunately, that's what this makes me think of, where it's like, it probably wasn't, but it feels a little bit like we name drop serious things to give our media more drama or more like heaviness to it.
More weight, yeah.
Yeah, more weight. Yeah, exactly. I felt a little bit like that because, like, I think maybe the art style also makes me feel like that because, yes, the one question my sister wanted me to ask is, why does Superman have anime eyes?
So, Ed McGuiness...
But you explained. Yeah.
I love Ed McGuiness. After rereading this, part of my research was I just bought up a bunch of Ed McGuiness comics. He's so good. He attributes his style as a mix of Art Adams and Masamune Shirow, the Ghost in the Shell artist. And I totally get it. Everybody's got the big anime eyes, but everybody else has the big torsos. Women are like very busty, right? Like, and round. Yeah. I love this art. I wish more superhero comics looked like this.
Yeah, I think but like, to me, because the art, as you said, is a little bit more youthful and like manga inspired with like the the eyes. And it's less like, I guess, dark and gritty artwork. Name dropping serious events feels even more of a disconnect.
Completely.
Because like in some ways this reminds me a lot of like Archie comics, art-wise. Not like the older stuff like Dan DeCarlo and not like the super new stuff, but I remember when I was reading Archie comics in probably like the early 2010s, they started experimenting a lot with different styles of comics.
Yes, the big art change, yeah.
Yeah, and so, I mean, I was always like, I have so many volumes of Archie where it's just got random art styles, and I'm like, this is just go back to the normal. The normal works best.
Normal Archie.
I mean, Dan DeCarlo was one of my favorite artists, so I like his style the best. Ooh, wow, surprise. Yeah, so like that's what like this art style kind of reminded me of. So like kind of like the Archie comics from the early 2010s and whatnot, probably also in the late 2000s. So it definitely felt like it was for a younger art audience, because Archie is supposed to be like what? Late
it's for like a preteen audience, right? Yeah,
high.
Elementary.
Yeah, except I don't know. Is Archie supposed to be for girls or for boys? I don't know. So that's what like the art style kind of made me feel like. And then I was like, yeah. And then Uncle Sam shows up. I guess because we're Canadian, so I didn't grow up knowing a lot about who Uncle Sam is, but I assume maybe US kids, if they were to read it, like if they were late elementary, early junior high, they would know who Uncle Sam is.
I don't know. I remember being a kid being puzzled by who's this old man punching Superman, thinking that it's really cool, right? Like, oh, he's punching Superman. That must mean he's really tough, which, but like not understanding what it meant. Now, gradually, I was able to connect 2 and 2 together, but yeah, I don't know. Our Canadian equivalent.
You would have been what? Like, elementary school?
I would have been like 4 or 5.
Yeah, I wouldn't have known anything. I would have barely known who Superman was
6.
when I was
I would
4.
Have been, no, 5 for sure. I was 5.
Yeah. I'm like, did 5-year-old you even know what the Statue of Liberty was?
Yeah. I a lot of that stuff, like even thinking back, I probably would have totally bought into like all the nationalism stuff. I would have thought that I was cool because that was just going on around me, kind of. Mm-hmm. Even as a Canadian kid.
Yeah. Conversely, I think was very disconnected from current events when I was like elementary age. I did not know what 9/11 was in elementary age. Never heard of it. We also didn't really watch TV in my house, so like was not a thing I was exposed to. And I mean, like the comics I read were Archie comics, which are very, for the most part, not current in their stories. So I had very little of that nationalism idea. I barely probably even knew what the US was at the time.
Right. Like thinking back, first off, my exposure to 9/11 was, I can kind of remember watching the news, like watching CNN and watching the towers go down and thinking like it was just an accident, like it was like a stunt gone wrong or something. Like not understanding at all the global significance of the event. Mm-hmm. But I do remember like all this American stuff started flooding to the point where there was like a commemorative US flag 9/11 Buzz Lightyear toy. So that's like, that kind of fed into like my fascination with this book, I think, is all the nationalism going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Meanwhile, yeah, no, I don't think I knew. Like I said, we were probably quite sheltered as children looking back. I don't think I knew what 9/11 was until like junior high, which is a little bit after 2001.
Yeah, no kidding.
So, no, like looking back, it's like I really didn't have much in terms of like pop culture, except for like watching like Disney movies and princess movies, and then also like the Land Before Time movies and Archie comics. So yeah, no, not much for nationalism, not much for like general events that happened at the time. this comic would have made so little sense to me if I would have read it at the same time you did.
I mean, it didn't make much sense to me either.
Yeah,
but...
exactly. But on the topic of making sense, I will say one thing that maybe I'm dumber at reading comics than I think I am, but when I started reading this comic, I'm like, why is Lex Luthor blue? Is he an alien? I don't think that's how it goes. Why is he talking to only blue people? Are they all aliens? What's happening? And then I realized that no, I think the Lex Luthor scenes are just using red, white, and blue for their coloring.
Yes, it's the thematic
yeah.
aspect. So it's colored by Tanya and Rich Horry. They're a duo of colorists. Mm-hmm. I love the coloring in this book. I love the theming of the red, white, and blue Oval Office, and then the fight scene between Clark and Uncle Sam it's red, white, and blue panels. Yeah. All of them are colored in red, white, and blue in that sequence, which is like awesome. I wish it lasted way longer.
Yeah, I wish the whole comic was like that.
Right.
I think it's kind of sad that it goes back to full color. I'm like, no, the limited color palette looks great.
Not only does it go back to full color, the action's over. It's only 3 pages. Oh.
But they have to have like 4 pages of Superman and Uncle Sam looking at American monuments and shaking hands on top of the Statue of Liberty. We need so much space for that. No, we can't have a fight scene in a superhero comic.
It's frustrating.
Question. So the red, white, and blue scenes of being in the Oval Office with Lex Luthor, and then there's the red, white, and blue for the fight scene, and then the rest of it's full color. Do you think there's any thematic reason why the Lex Luthor scenes are red, white, and blue, but the rest of the normal non-fight scenes with Superman are full color?
I think Loeb, McGuiness, and the colorists accidentally stumble on a prescient thesis that I think we can learn from even today. And I don't think that they're aware of it. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously they're saying ultra-nationalism is bad, right? I think that's kind of the message. Superman has to talk down Uncle Sam and say it's not about the power of the government or the people who hold power. It's about the people. It's about average working class citizens, right? Mm-hmm. The problem is, at the end of the book, Lex Luthor, using the United States surveillance apparatus, has discovered Clark Kent's secret identity. That Clark Kent is Superman. He's won. So it doesn't matter what Superman has to say about patriotism and, oh, well, we got to trust Luthor because the American people voted for him. He's lost already. All this talking, all this nonsense, all this we'll fight and shake hands stuff, it doesn't work. I think... Now, Loeb clearly doesn't mean that, and it gets resolved way later.
Okay.
But the message of the book should be, Uncle Sam, we gotta take Luthor out of office right now, today. We gotta actually do something. We can't fight each other. Just like on Twitter, we can't have these stupid fights on Twitter about, this or that quote unquote problem. You have to actually do political action. Because the bad guys have already won. Yeah, there's this panel here of Superman and Uncle Sam standing on top of the Statue of Liberty, and Superman's like, one of the things we do best in America is endure. And it's like... That's not useful. It's not productive.
Yeah. It's like, and I'm like, all I can think is like, is this propaganda? Is it trying to tell the youths, just endure? It'll be fine. Don't try to, take any action. Just do what we do best.
So in my research, I tried to track down when exactly Luthor was elected president, right? Which was hard. I looked at DC wikis, and I gave me a bunch of runabout answers. Finally, I found an online scan of a trade released in 2018 called President Luthor. And it just collects all of the pages in all these various Superman titles where it's about Luthor campaigning and then him winning the election. One of the stories several of the stories involve various DC superheroes and Superman having conversations about what are we going to do about President Luthor.
Mm-hmm.
And all of them are like, well, the people elected him, so we can't do anything about it. But one day he's going to mess up, and then we'll go get him. Every single one. There's a issue of Superman where it's Christmas time, post-election, and he's going to all the Justice League members. It's a great issue because he's like giving them presents. It's very funny.
Mm-hmm.
But he goes to each one of them, and he's like, okay, well, Luthor's president. What do you have to say about it? And they're like, oh, it's bad, but we can't do anything about it. No, go do something about it.
It's
You
like,
guys are
you
superheroes.
You guys could literally punch through his chest, no problem. Like,
You guys are. It's Lex. Like, to quote a certain Justice League cartoon, it's Lex flipping Luthor. You can do whatever you want to this guy. He's bad.
yeah,
It's so frustrating.
and it's like. So it's like, I mean, there's some parts of, like, the things that Superman says that, like, I think is, like, good and stuff. Uncle Sam said something about, like, ooh, alien codes of non-interference, blah, blah. Sounds like that's a little, like, they're being slightly racist against aliens.
Yeah, isn't that sinister today? Like, holy crap.
Yeah, and Superman being like, no, America is all people, even aliens. And I'm like, you know what? This, like, good. You know what? Saying some good stuff here. I think this is like a very wholesome view of America compared to whatever has been going on since then.
It's a wholesome view of America, but they still elected Lex Luthor.
Exactly.
He still won the vote. It's not that wholesome.
It's just like this wild discrepancy between, yeah, you know what, we should all accept all people in America and it's great, and then they're like, yeah, we'll just let this evil guy hang out as president. We just have to endure. It's like,
We'll solve the problem one day.
Yeah, I get not writing a children's comic that the thesis is overthrow your government, let's go kids, rise up. But like, I mean, telling them just to endure is kind of worse, and it definitely feels like propaganda.
Totally.
Yeah. And I'm like, was it on purpose though? Was that propaganda of just enduring on purpose? We're going to have a conspiracy theory about how DC is working with the government.
Now, this would have been during the Bush presidency, so it is a little odd that, like, I don't know if Jeph Loeb is trying to say, like, Lex Luthor is just like George W. Bush, because, like, the book doesn't address the war in the Middle East at all, the war on terror at all. There's this big crossover. Our world's at war where aliens invade, and it's all the DC heroes trying to fight these aliens. It's really dumb. Like, it's full of action, which looks kind of nice, but it means nothing. It's really stupid. So I don't know. Like, I just don't know what Loeb is trying to say about the presidency, other than my theory, which he stumbles across accidentally.
Is this another case of the comic seems like it's saying something, but the authors just did all of it on accident?
Right. Part of the other problem is he's working at a larger conglomerate, right? Like, obviously, Time Warner, DC, Discovery Company can't, like, outright say we hate such and such president, because they probably get some government funding, and they also don't want to get, taken down by the government. Yeah.
But, I mean, like, they could have at least maybe tried to have a more coherent message?
Yeah.
Or did they somehow, just because it's a corporation, end up with, unsurprisingly, the most sanitized and banal version of a message they can send?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Do you think this comic would have worked better if it was written for an older audience? And they had the ability to maybe tackle some of these serious issues more seriously?
I don't know. In my research, I read some of the earlier first appearance Superman stuff, like from the 30s and 40s. There's several issues. I'm thinking of Action Comics #2 and Superman #2 specifically, and a 2-page story in Look magazine where Superman goes across the country and he ends wars. Like, he goes on the front lines, he stops the fighting, then he kidnaps members of state, and he sends them to the League of Nations so that they can get thrown in jail. And that stuff seems, that, like, kiddie interpretation of the world seems way more prescient than this, like, even-handed stuff that's supposed to appeal to the same kids who are buying all the video games and the ads for this issue.
Yeah, all the ads in this issue. Yeah, like, how many pages was this thing, and how many pages were ads?
I think it's 22 pages. I don't know. I'm not going to count all the ads, but literally every single one. It's all video games. So that'll tell you what the audience what the Superman office thinks the audience for Superman is.
Yeah. I mean, and there's also the thing that, like, if this is for a younger audience, do the younger audience even care about a political story?
No. I can tell you right now, no kids were reading Superman at this point.
Yeah, and they would be like, yeah, there's only like 2 pages of a fight, and it's cool, and it's colored awesome. Uncle Sam is yoked. Look at those forearms.
Well, seriously, look at those guns.
I think it's really funny that you said in your intro, yes, he was a slender figure. Not anymore.
No. When he's drawn by McGuiness, every McGuiness superhero is ripped.
Yeah. So, like, are the kids here for, like, political debate and, like, Lex Luthor talking about surveillance? I don't think I would have been very... I mean, I've read Archie comics, which aren't very action-heavy anyways. There's a bunch of talking in those. But, like, does this appeal to the children?
Well, you remember those Archie comics where they met Sarah Palin and Barack Obama?
That's hilarious. I don't think I read those.
Those were, like, big deals. Those were, like, on the news. I seem to recall those. Now, those obviously are after this, but, like, I don't know. Archie could get political sometimes, I guess.
And it was always like, well, I mean, I was always like, what's the point? Like, just tell me the Archie stories. And they'd always be like, ooh, special issue, this is happening. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, what's Archie's stance on this, though?
Yeah.
What's Mr. Weatherby's stance?
And also, it's like, I'm in grade 6. I'm not here reading a political debate. I'm here to watch the funny things about how the vehicle doesn't work right now. Haha, the hijinks they get up to.
Yeah.
But, I mean, maybe it is useful to try to introduce children to some of these topics. But maybe not in this sort of way.
Maybe not in this format.
No. I mean, I know every time, like, the Archie comics did something special, I was like, yeah, but, like, why would I get that one? That's just, like, a one-issue thing. I'm gonna go buy the double digest because there's way more story in it. I'm getting a better bang for my buck per pages.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then I'm, like, holding a full book instead of, like, the one issue of half of the story. So I'm like, no thanks.
So, yeah, I don't think a children audience was reading this. Now, in my research reading Wizard Magazine, they hyped up this storyline like crazy. They loved Ed McGuinness art, and they loved Jeph Loeb. For sure, they loved Jeph Loeb. So they were saying, like, compared to the late 90s Superman, this was like a revelation. And I hesitate to say that it's better written, but it does certainly feel less stiff than that stuff. But it is more of the same. Yeah,
like, I will say, reading the dialogue, it doesn't feel like, well, there's not a super huge amount of, like, caption boxes that are giving a summary of what's happening in the panel. So I do appreciate that. So that's great. Yeah, it definitely feels more natural. I mean, there's not a lot of story that's happening because it is only, like, 20 whatever pages. So, like, in that regard, it's good. And I will say, this is one of the American comics. I'm not going to say it's ugly because it's colored. I do like the coloring in this one. It is colored well. I like it. I don't know if that's the nostalgia for it being slightly like Archie comics or just the fact that the red, white, and blue coloring is really carrying this thing.
I think it looks good.
It does look good. I mean, sometimes, I don't know if it's just my brain is stupid, but sometimes I think that Uncle Sam looks a little bit like the KFC guy.
Totally. He looks exactly like Colonel Sanders. You're right.
Yeah. We got anime Superman and Colonel Sanders.
Colonel Sanders. That would be a comic. Yeah. Actually, no. I'm not going to. Never mind. There is a KFC DC crossover. We don't have to get into it.
Oh my God. Amazing. Do you think this kind of comic, or specifically this comic, or this sort of comic, will get published today?
They've tried stuff like this before. There was a Marvel issue, this was years back, this was during the first Trump term, where they invented a character called MoDam. And I can't remember what the acronym was, but he was like, you know, MODOK? He's like the floaty head guy. He's like an evil villain. So it was Trump's face on the floaty head guy. So they would, every once in a while, they do stuff like that. A lot of it is kind of toothless. Not a lot of it is actual, you know, they're not looking into stuff. They're not revealing anything interesting other than Orange Man bad. You know what I'm saying?
If you think like if this exact comic, but you just updated some of the national tragedies, and if it got released like this year, what do you think the reception to it would be?
Oh, horrible. People would hate it.
Because it's so bland and doesn't say anything?
Well, and because it motions towards saying something, and people on both sides of the aisle would get upset about that, I think.
Yeah.
The way that I'm upset about it, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, definitely agreed. Yeah, it's toothless, and it feels very of the time. Don't know if it was toothless at the time it came out. I did not read it when I was 6. And you were 6, so you don't know what's happening.
Aspects of the President Luthor story are like weirdly predictive. Chief among them, in like, I think it was the 90s, they printed a book which it was basically a parody of The Art of the Deal, but it was Lex Luthor, which is very funny when they did it. And that kind of post-crisis 1980s Lex was more or less a parody of Trump at that point in time. When he was running for office, there's a story in Superman where there's an assassination attempt on him, which basically wins him the presidency. And it's hinted that maybe it was staged. And all I could think when I read that was, oh my goodness. How weird. What a weird coincidence. Yeah. Now, they don't outright say it was staged, but it makes you scratch your head, you know?
Yeah. Oh my god, that's hilarious.
So stuff like that, you know, I think would be interesting to see reprinted. I don't think they ever will, though. I think they're going to lean away from President Luthor stuff in the future, including in adaptations.
I mean, like, you know what? I was going to say, what if they took like a real wild take and they had a Luthor president storyline and like the superheroes actually did something about it and got rid of him and it was like actually said something, but is that too much to ask from a company?
Yeah,
from the big corporation?
They're never going to do that unless they like leaned heavily into the fantasy aspect. Like if Luthor took over the Oval Office in like a mech suit, right? Like you could see that being published in a one and done, but they're never going to have the American people vote for him ever again. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I was just thinking, this is the second podcast in a row that we're talking about something to do with a president. Last episode, we talked about the manga Baki and how they will routinely just beat up American presidents. What do you think that says more than this comic does, instead of in like an opinion way?
Yes, I think the Baki author is more cogent when he has his evil, I hate to use the word anti-hero, straight up arch villain kick the president's ass than these issues of Superman where the superheroes sit around and mope about something that they could easily solve. Yes.
But that's the things you can get away with when A, you are not from America, and B, you don't work for a company.
Correct.
Yeah.
Going back to my introduction, what do you think the place for... We'll start with Uncle Sam. What do you think that character's place is in today's comics landscape and then the general cultural landscape?
So, I mean, the caveat that, of course, we are Canadian.
Yes, correct.
So, I mean, I can't speak from the point of view of an American, but I think having the figure representing your country being an old white man is of its time when it happened, and is like not the best representation we should be having now, when it seems like there is currently old white men ruining the US. So that part of it's quite outdated. And it's like, it's hard for me to say as a non-American, because I don't want to be like, hello Americans, let me speak for you on what figure should represent you. But I've never, like, Uncle Sam has always seemed like a super outdated figure to me. Just like, what does he do? He's just a guy. It's like to me, he doesn't represent anything other than he wears red, white, and blue colors. He's not even cool. Like, at least the eagle is strong and epic looking. Just some guy. It means nothing. I think it's very vapid. It doesn't represent, it's never represented anything for me, so I feel no strong leaning towards him as a figure.
I kind of agree with you. I think,
yeah.
I don't know. I think countries should be done with nationalism generally. So having like a mascot, even as harmless as having a mascot, should maybe be frowned upon. Especially this, rich white business capitalist owner that Uncle Sam kind of represents. It's interesting how that kind of falls by the wayside, right? Like immediately going into World War I and then immediately following. We don't talk about how he's based on this guy who's like a meat packer.
Yeah, I
he
mean, I
punches
had no
guys,
idea.
I guess.
I had no idea where the Uncle Sam name came from until you gave your intro. So I've learned something today. That's great.
That's right. We're an education podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Because, fun fact, in Canadian history classes, you do not learn about the backstory of Uncle Sam.
I mean, we don't even learn our national figures. So we've got...
we have national figures.
Yeah, I think it's Canada Jack, who's like just a Mountie. So it's like, you get it.
Yeah, and like, personally, I like that. Not to get political or anything, but I don't really care about nationalism. I think... don't be super nationalistic, it gets kind of cringe. And so, like, even when people, like, get super nationalistic about, like, hockey games and stuff, I'm like, chill.
Totally.
It's a game. I mean, I'm biased, I love hockey, so, like, when people try to bring the nationalism into hockey, I'm like, go away, I'm watching a sport. Like, I remember, like, there was the Four Nations earlier this year, and then the final was America and Canada playing against each other. And on the news and stuff, everybody was making it all about like, oh, Canada versus the US, blah, 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 as a country. And I'm like, I get it. These are tough times, but like, it's a sport. And I watched the final game and I was like, I don't like how it feels currently watching this game, that if Canada loses, people are gonna feel like there's something not enough about the country itself. This is a hockey game.
I couldn't agree with you more. I had the exact same thought during the playoffs. Yeah, it's so sad.
I know, and it's like, get rid of your nationalism. Stop it. And I guess you could, bring it back to comics, since that's what this is about. Maybe keep your nationalism out of comics unless you're actually saying something. Don't use it as window dressing. Don't use it as, oh, now we can have a plot point about Lex Luthor being president. Ooh. How about use your comic to tell a story and have themes and have a message? That's what it's for. It's a storytelling medium.
Yeah.
Yeah. If someone made a comic and it actually said something, like at that point, I don't even care what side they're trying to talk about. But if they made a coherent story for an appropriate audience and actually said something, good. At least you're saying something. Not, all right, kids, endure.
That's right.
No.
You don't have to change anything. You just have to live through it.
I also think that seeing it have that message of it's a full page panel and they're like, one of the things we do best in America is endure. It's like, that feels like a very privileged thing to say.
Totally agree. It ignores the larger problems that caused the Lex Luthor presidency, right? Yeah. Or the things that he's done while he's in office that have been harmful to the American people.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, some people can't afford to endure. Like, literally afford it, or for personal safety reasons or anything like that. It's like, no.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's the kind of thing a corporation would say. I'm not going to make any assumptions about the state of DC in 2002 or whatever, but I presume it was, as comics usually go, mostly men, a lot of white people.
Well, yeah. In the Superman offices, they would have just kicked out a woman, Louise Simonson. Great writer. But yeah, it was a bunch of guys running the Superman books at the time.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't know, it just feels like in poor taste to say that. Just, oh yeah, one of the best things we do in America is endure. It's like, okay, well, maybe you can. Also, you're Superman saying that.
And what does Superman do? He goes to Japan. He has a date with his wife in Japan. It's
yeah,
not really enduring very well if you're leaving.
You can literally escape it easily and not even have to deal with it.
Yeah. Frustrating.
And it's like, yeah, well, maybe, yeah, not everybody can just do that.
Well, let's bring it to Superman. Superman's having a big media push this summer.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, I don't know if you care about Superman, but I watched that trailer for the movie that's coming out, and they make a big point of showing that Superman is a man of action. Unlike in this comic, he actually, just like in the Golden Age, he goes to this, it seems like he goes to a war-torn nation and he stops a fight. He like ends it before it can begin. And the trailer it shows him being criticized for those actions. Do you think that's the right way to take the character, maybe back to his roots, or do you prefer this sort of this even-handed, softer Superman? Well, what are your thoughts on Superman?
Either way, even-handed, boring Superman is boring and bad. So you say in the trailer he goes to a different country, stops a conflict, and then he gets berated for it?
That's what it appears is going on, yeah.
I'm like, somewhere in my mind, there's another movie that had that exact same plot at the start of it. And it was a superhero movie. Was it another Superman movie?
Maybe. Oh no, it probably, yeah, it might be. It might be
bad. Do you have a recollection of this?
It might be Batman versus Superman that you're thinking of.
It might be, because I was like, I swear, like, was Lois Lane there?
Yeah. No, like, that's the one you're thinking of.
I swear, I was like, are you just describing a movie that already exists? Wait, what? So, first of all, I think they've already done that. Second of all, it's like, haven't we done this storyline a bunch? I mean, like, even back in, like, freaking, what was it, 2008, when the first Iron Man movie existed, he goes to a different country and solves a bunch, and, like, you know, stops the conflict there by blowing up a bunch of people with his Iron Man suit.
So you're against superheroes being involved in foreign intervention, is what I'm getting.
I'm not against it. It's just that, like, the movies keep doing the same thing. And if Batman and Superman had this exact same plot point from however many years ago it was, how long ago was that?
That was 2016.
It's like, we're in a very different world than in 2016. I mean, in some ways it's very similar. Cringe. But like, we're almost 10 years since that. And it's like, and if you're creating a movie that has a very similar thing, hopefully, I don't know, maybe they'll handle it differently. I don't know. I don't even know if, like, in the Batman versus Superman movie, what were they trying to say? Because I feel like they were trying to say, ooh, Superman has too much power. He's just going off and doing these things. Does he have the right to do this?
Right. I think the messaging might be different. I hope the messaging is different than that movie.
Yeah. Because, like, you could have this event happen and take it a lot of different ways. It could be like, hey, classic American thinking you can, well, he's not American, but, you know, whatever, symbol of America, going to a different country being like, actually, I can solve your problems. And then the country being like, huh? And he'd be like, boom, solved your problem. Oh, did I do something? Did I destroy some things in the process? Whatever. I'm America. I can do what I want. Do I think they're going to do that kind of commentary and be like, hey, maybe America shouldn't do this, as this is a movie made for a lot of money in America? I don't know. Is that too strong of a stance for them to make in a movie for the general masses?
I wonder, there's been a big push to frame Superman as a citizen of the world and less as an American. So I wonder if that will come up also. Like, it's one thing in Batman v Superman, he goes over and he does some stuff. It's really convoluted. And then the US is in hot water because Superman's in hot water. So I'm wondering, I'm hoping that they don't do the same thing there. But I think you're right. The idea of Superman as like this American military apparatus that can just go in and do foreign intervention is like probably a little problematic.
Yeah, and like also this is a movie being made for the general population. I don't think they're gonna make some big political statement in it, which would like make half of the country of America or half of the people who might watch it not want to watch it because oh no, they made Superman too woke or something. Or they'd be like, oh, they made Superman a fascist, oh no. So like I really think it's probably gonna be quite toothless, just because they don't want it's a movie company, they want to make money, so they don't want to off-put any kind of audience. So I'm like, I don't really see how they could make it very poignant unless they piss someone off. And as far as I know, corporations don't like doing that because they like everybody buying their stuff.
That's right.
Yeah. So I'm interested to see what it does, but like, I have a sinking feeling that it's not going to be very groundbreaking. It'll probably be, unfortunately, it might be pretty mid.
Do you have any other general thoughts on Superman as like a character? How would you...
So, I never grew up reading a lot of superhero comics. Unfortunately, I mean, I don't know. Unfortunately, fortunately, I don't know just how life is. I got introduced to superheroes a lot through movies that they made of superheroes. And like, obviously, I knew what the general idea of Superman was. Because, you know, there's kids that dress up as Superman for Halloween. And I'm like, oh, cool, superhero. I think Superman's kind of bland. I think he's kind of boring. He's just a dude. I mean, sure, like, he's like, oh, you know, one of the first ones. So maybe it's just like a bunch of other superheroes have cribbed on his style. Like, oh, you know, his day job is he's a meek guy, you know, and then he's also a superhero. And it's like, yeah, everybody has secret identities, and his secret identity, well, his normal identity is kind of boring, and his superhero identity is, oh, he's got lots of powers. What are they? They change all the time. He's super powerful. He's got one weakness. It just seems very run-of-the-mill by the books. It probably wasn't like that when it first came up, and it was probably super cool and super new. But unfortunately, we live in a world where there's so many superheroes, and Superman's just kind of boring at this point. Well, at least to me. He's more interesting to me as like what he hypothetically represents and the conceptual idea of him. Just like how there's a lot of famous art that I've learned through art history that I like better as like conceptually what it stands for as opposed to what it is as art. Like the black square, which is a painting of a black square, is a lot more interesting as a like what it's about, and its concept and its creation and the situation that existed in is very interesting. I wrote an essay about it, so obviously I think it's interesting, but the painting really is just a black square. So conceptually it's more interesting. Yeah?
I didn't think I knew a comparison between Superman and the black square painting.
Oh, no. I love breaking up the black square painting. Because, like, yeah, it's one of the great examples in art of how physically the art piece, in my mind, doesn't have that much value as aesthetics or as art, but the concept of it and its creation and what it was created in and what it's in response to is way more interesting. So, in concept, especially historically, Superman is more interesting to me than what he is physically in the story that I'm looking at. And like, also his aesthetics are kind of boring. He's just wearing a superhero suit, like it's red, white, and blue. I mean, what can I say? It's kind of boring.
This comic didn't change your mind at all about your preconceived notions on the character?
What, like aesthetically or just conceptually?
Just generally, I don't know.
No, not really. I think this lined up almost exactly with what I thought, because, like, I mean, you're introduced to him on the front cover. He's got the eagle on his shoulder. He's in front of a flag, and you're like, yeah. I mean, he's not even really American, but like in comics, it feels like he's always connected to the American way of life and all that stuff. And then, like, the next page is literally him being like, yeah, I'm having slice of pie.
That's
what
right.
Is he? And he originally wants American cheese, and I'm like, oh, of course he wants American cheese. But he's like, oh, we might get a little spicy and try non-American cheese. And I'm like, you've never seen more milquetoast than right now, my guy. Like, and I'm just like, to me, this comic was like the epitome of what a Superman is, and it's because it's not really saying anything. It's all America. And then it's got a goofy little story where he fights Uncle Sam. And it's like, okay, yeah, I'm not surprised. This comic did nothing to change my opinion. If he would have done something, if he would have had a talk with Uncle Sam, they were like, you're right. We do need to fix this. I just watched Lex Luthor corrupt Uncle Sam, the spirit of America. And he just flies through the window. Like, at the end, Lex Luthor's like, Clark Kent is Superman. And then Superman, and like, smashes through the window and drop kicks him, and his
kicks
head
his ass, yeah.
Yeah, and his head like pops off or whatever, and he gets I don't know. Does Superman have like laser eyes? I don't know. Is that a power he can have?
Yeah, he's got laser eyes.
Yeah, if he like zaps Lex Luthor and turns him into a little pile of whatever on the carpet, like Lex Luthor did to that other guy. You know what? That would be, or did he just kill him? Did he just shoot him?
No, he disintegrates him, yeah.
Yeah. You know what? If Superman comes in here and disintegrates Lex Luthor and then just solves the problem that way, I don't know. Okay, I don't know who this vice president guy is.
So that's Pete Ross. He's a pre-established character. He would have been invented in the late 40s, 50s. There was a period where they were publishing Superman stories. It was Superman when he was a boy. He was Superboy, and he was hanging out in Smallville. It was Archie. It was literally Archie meets Superman. And he had a cast. He had like a cast of characters like Ma and Pa Kent. Mm-hmm. He had a girlfriend, Lana Lang, not to be confused with Lois Lane, no relation. And then he had his best friend, Pete Ross. And the thing about Pete Ross was Pete knew Superboy's identity, but he didn't let Superboy know. He didn't want Superboy to be embarrassed. And he didn't go spouting it about town, you know. He wasn't bragging. My best friend is Superboy. So that's where that character comes from. So him becoming the vice president is sort of a shocking heel twist. It's a way to keep the reader on edge of, oh, this administration, it's Lex Luthor as the president, and he's so bad. But it's Pete Ross, and Pete Ross is so nice. He's a great vice president. You know what I'm saying?
In this continuity, does Pete Ross know that Clark Kent is Superman?
Yes, he does.
He would. So what it should be is, now Lex Luthor is a little pile of mush on the carpet, and Pete Ross comes in, and he's like, I heard some noise. What happened? He's like, oh, gasp! And then Superman's standing there all epically with his cape blowing in the wind. And wouldn't it be great if, like, his cape was blowing in the wind and it, like, looked like the American flag or something. And he's standing there and he's like, you're president now. And then Pete Ross is like, I got this. And then he actually does something good.
Yeah, they would never publish that in a billion years.
Yeah, but I think it'd be a better... They wouldn't, but I think it'd be a better story than this. At least it would have more action.
Yeah, and it wouldn't drag out like this dragged on. This Lex Luthor's president dragged on for so freaking long. Do you care to know how this ended?
Yeah, I'd love to know.
Okay, so first off, Luthor knows...
Please tell me he steps down because of, like, a controversy or something, like
yes, kind of. So first off, there was a group of characters invented shortly before this run in, Action Comics 775, called the Elite. And the Elite were a parody of ultra edgy British superheroes. They were a parody of like the Authority or the Ultimates or Stormwatch. They were like superheroes that weren't afraid to kill, and they didn't wear costumes, and they're really badass, right? Mm-hmm. One of the characters was a psychic named Manchester Black. And in an earlier issue, Superman lobotomizes the psychic part of Manchester Black's brain. So Manchester Black doesn't have psychic powers anymore. He's powerless. Now, it turns out what Superman actually did, he lobotomized the part of Manchester Black's brain that made him think he had psychic powers. So he still had the psychic powers, but he just couldn't access it. So eventually he relearns. Uh-huh. As part of an ongoing scheme, Manchester Black makes Clark think that Lex killed Lois, I think is how it goes. Mm-hmm. And he like tries to drive Superman insane. And eventually Superman snaps out of it, right? And he kicks Manchester Black's ass. And as punishment, he makes Manchester Black scramble Lex Luthor's memories so he doesn't remember that Clark Kent is Superman. So this issue immediately, right? Throw it in the garbage. It's not worth anything. Now, eventually, in a spin-off book, Batman/Superman, it's revealed that Luthor has been stealing, or he's been getting technology from this alien race called the New Gods, specifically the evil New Gods of Apocalypse.
Okay.
He's been using it as a way to have an escape plan because he notices, like, he uses the same surveillance satellites that he uses in this issue. He discovers that there's a kryptonite meteor headed towards Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So he smears Superman in the press saying that, oh, it's attracted to Superman, so it's coming to Earth because Superman's here.
Mm-hmm.
That's not true, but he's going to use that momentum so that, and he's not going to stop the meteor. That's the other thing. Luthor's not going to act on it.
Mm-hmm.
So when the meteor hits, he's just going to escape. He's just going to go to Apocalypse.
Okay.
Now, in a really stupid story, Lex gets hopped up on kryptonite steroids, and he just brags to the Daily Planet that was his plan. There's no special reveal or anything. He just goes, "It was me." And then Batman and Superman kick his ass. And then he's not the president anymore. There's no impeachment. The people don't recognize their mistakes or errors. There's no, like, they don't uphold the government. Lex just kind of self-destructs. I wonder if Jeph is trying to say, if Loeb, is trying to say something about how absolute power corrupts absolutely and how people are hoisted on their own petard. But we know in the real world that that's not how that works. You know what I'm saying?
That's kind of boring. Yeah, there's so many more interesting ways they could have made his presidency end.
Like, there's no scandal, really, right? Like,
yeah, they could have made a They could have had a scandal about it. Come on.
Especially because there was all these overlying plot lines from this era. For instance, in this President Luthor thing that I found, I guess in the 90s he had like a baby mama situation, or like a sort of wife, sort of not wife. So he just assassinates her prior to him getting elected.
Oh, okay.
That's not followed up on at all.
Okay. Does it even motivate him? Like, did they you can't even say they fridged her, because, like, it did not, like, it motivated him or anything. He just had to get an obstacle out of the way, I guess?
Yeah, completely. In another story, he has to, just like, well, in theory, as a president, you're supposed to divulge yourself of any financial ties, right? So he has to get rid of LexCorp. He gets the daughter of Batman villain and cool character in her own right, Talia al Ghul. Are you familiar with this character?
Yep.
So he just hires her to take over LexCorp, and then nothing happens with that.
Oh.
Loeb kind of references it in a Batman story down the line, but I don't know. And then I guess he gets his company back at some point.
Yeah. Oh, it's anticlimactic.
Right. It just kind of fizzles out. It's like, you're trying to say something about nationalism and the presidency and what heroes' rules are in the face of tyranny, and then it just kind of fades into the background. I don't know. It's frustrating. Yeah. This is why people don't like American comics.
They just go on for too long and then fizzle out.
And then other people have better ideas. I don't know.
To be fair, there's a lot of manga that do that too. They go on really long and then they have an unsatisfying ending that everyone hates. And it feels rushed, like they only had one volume to fix it. You know, it's not a specifically American comic problem, but yeah, I'll complain about it in American comics, yeah, for sure. Oh, man. Did you read any of this other part of this series, or was, like, when you were a child, this the only one you read, and, like, have you read more of it since?
As a kid, this is all that I would have known about this story. I did, just in the research for this episode, I read up on all that stuff. It's weird. The trade constantly contradicts itself, specifically how Clark learns that Lex is going to be president. It's either he learns it in the offices of the Daily Planet, or he learns it, he's like at the event where Luthor gets inaugurated, or he's like in space, like destroying meteors in frustration. It's a really uneven trade. That's why part of the reason why we didn't cover that, like the whole Lex Luthor presidency.
Oh, what? Superman, you were out there destroying meteors because you were upset that Lex Luthor got in to be president? How about instead of destroying meteors, you just destroy Lex Luthor?
That's the worst part.
Do something about it.
Part of the story is Superman hears the news. He zooms down to Metropolis, to Luthor's party, right? And you're thinking, oh, he's going to go kick his ass, or he's going to give him a stern talking to. No, he goes and shakes his hand.
Ugh, what a weenie. Ugh, that's ugh.
It's disgusting.
Why? Why?
There's a better story. So part of it, I don't know. This must have been in some sort of annual, but it's Batman. He infiltrates Lex Luthor's office, and he basically straight up says, Luthor, I'm going to kick your ass. You're not going to be president anymore. And I'm going to, like, leak all these files. And Lex basically threatens Batman, like, I'm going to expose your secret identity, man. I'm going to find out who you are, and then you're going to be done being Batman if you do that. Which, that's way more interesting. That's like an actual stalemate.
That's way more interesting. And then, like, they have to, like do a smart person kind of battle to, like, oh, see who can come out on top of this. I mean, like, to be fair, if Batman just, like, killed him at that instant, he'd never find out who Batman was, but I think I remember something about how Batman doesn't kill people, so... I mean, he could have. He also could have just kidnapped... You could just kidnap President Luthor and keep him in a basement dungeon and be like, oh, yeah, gotcha.
Yeah,
got him.
They would never do that.
There's just, like, the Bat Cave, and there's, like, a cage hanging somewhere, and someone's like, hey, what's that?
Can you
that's
imagine?
just President Luthor, don't worry about it. He was going to try to find out who I was, so I just had to neutralize that threat.
20 years later, there's, like, some writer that has to explain, well, there's the giant dinosaur because of this case, and the giant penny. Oh, and Lex Luthor is imprisoned down here.
Yeah. Come on, that'd be so much more interesting. They gotta just find more like comics do insane plot stuff. Why can't they do that kind of insane plot stuff? That'd be hilarious.
Especially because Lex is a fictional president. Like they're not. It's not Bush, right? It's not Superman going, we have to take down George W. Bush. Yeah. It's Luthor.
Yeah. Put him in a cage. That's hilarious. Now I kind of want to write I kind of want to write a parody version of this, but I might get a cease and desist for using their characters.
Well, that puts me into kind of my final note is that, so Superman's going to be entering the public domain pretty quick. It's 2034, which will put him in the same status as Uncle Sam is right now, where Uncle Sam is in the public domain. Do you see people using Superman to make political statements in the future when that happens? Or do you see Superman just kind of fading into the background the same way Uncle Sam is sort of faded into the background? Or will Superman just remain this DC trademark that is untouchable because DC's lawyers are crazy?
Do you think they're going to find a way to make him not get into public domain? Is that legal?
It's tough. Well, Mickey Mouse is in the public domain now, and that was never supposed to happen. You know what I'm saying?
So there's precedent that it could be in the public domain. So, possible options. They say, no, we're keeping him as our thing. No public domain for you. We will keep milking Superman until the heat death of the sun. Very high possibility that could happen. Or there's other possibilities. He goes into public domain and people actually do something useful with him. Maybe. Also, maybe some radical party or group will just be like, just adopt Superman as their mascot and just be cringe about it that way.
I can see that.
I can see that happening.
I could see sports teams starting to use Superman, honestly.
I was going to go more, whatever the new super radical, it'll be more likely it'll be some far right militant group will be like, yeah, we're the Superman soldiers.
Like those dorks that use the Punisher logo?
Yeah, and then they'll just start doing hate crimes, but they dress up as Superman and they wear a white hood over their heads or something too. That's a possibility. I don't want to live in that future, but it might exist. More likely, I think. More likely. What do I think is most likely? I do kind of think most likely is there'll be a long legal thing and DC will try to hold on to him as long as possible, because I think also the last thing DC wants is for everybody to legally be able to get their hands on Superman and then do whatever they want, because personally I think the first thing I would do is do a little pinup comic with Superman and be like, you can't stop me sexualizing Superman.
I could do my Superman porn.
Exactly.
Just as Jerry Siegel intended.
Yeah, got him. And then they couldn't cease and desist to me. That's the first thing I would do, and I feel like a DC wouldn't want that kind of thing to happen. They might just be like, no, we keep the copyright forever, but we're just not going to do anything with it. And then
that's way more frightening, I feel like. Yeah. I hate when freaking companies sit on stuff.
But I really do think the most likely is they'll find a way to keep the copyright. Even if they don't, they will just continue to milk Superman as a comic series until humanity ceases to exist. Because as long as it's making even a little bit of money, and it is somewhat selling, they're not going to stop.
And he remains recognizable. That's the other thing, right? Superman merch is still pretty profitable.
Yeah.
Not as much as Batman, but, you know.
Yeah, you know what I learned today? I work at a bakery, and we have a decoration, like, sample for Batman cakes, but no Superman cakes.
Oh, that black icing.
I asked about that today. I was like, oh wait, yeah, we have a Batman cake. Do we not have Superman cakes? No, we have no Superman cakes. So I guess nobody cares about Superman as much as they care about Batman right now.
He may have been number 1, but it'll always be number 2.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's like, maybe I don't think he'll ever disappear. No, I think it's way too ingrained in pop culture for Superman to disappear completely. It'll just maybe be a little less relevant. I don't know, maybe something politically will happen in the years that come up and he'll be more relevant. Maybe if somebody decides to do something actually useful and cool and make an actual statement, that would be kind of cool. Maybe he'd be more relevant that way. But I don't have high hopes. Not for a company like DC doing company things.
Yeah. Fair enough.
The last thing I'll say, I've been staring at the front cover of this comic pretty much the entire time we've been talking. Why is there no definition on the Superman logo? Why does it not follow the contours of his muscle? Like, it's just there.
Because it's like paper.
Yeah, but it just like overlaps. It just overlaps his abs and like goes over the center and bottom part of his chest, and it doesn't move with the fabric at all. It's just there. Just slap.
Oh, now I'm seeing it. No, but
no,
it looks good.
Mm-hmm.
It would make it complicated if his pecs were breaking up the S.
They could have at least just had a little bit of shading so it doesn't feel like he's just wearing a plate on his chest. Anyways, I've been staring at it for like over an hour, so I had to say something about it. Oh, and the last thing, right, the other thing my sister said, she's like, I get that strong chins are a show of manliness, but I think sometimes they can get a little too big of the strong chin.
The strong chin on every
look
male
at the front
character.
cover. Look at the front cover. 50% of his face is chin.
I think that was intentional. I think that might have been a Loeb edict.
I think it's intentional, just as the fact that the rest of this front cover is so intentional and it's very blatant imagery. Like, we gonna go hardcore with all the America.
The American
we gonna go hard
and the eagle and.
So we're gonna go hardcore with all the manly aspects we can. He's gonna have the biggest shoulders ever, and he's gonna have the strongest neck, and he's gonna have the biggest chin. So strong.
As Loeb described it when he was doing Superman for All Seasons with Tim Sale. Tim Sale's a beautiful artist too, but they described, well, Clark, he's corn-fed, so like his face would probably be a little bit more round. He wouldn't be as tight as, say, a Batman would be. He would look like a thumb, is how he described him. So I think that's where maybe the chin comes from, the jaw specifically. He's got a round thumb-like head, and that's kind of on purpose. I like that version of Superman. I like the idea that, like, he wouldn't be exercising. He's already the strongest man on the planet. Yeah. So he would be maybe a little doughy in the face.
Yeah. Is it possible to be a little doughy in the face when you have the most defined six-pack abs that exist? You have all the definition? Yeah.
How do they describe it? He's got a kind face. That's what I say.
Yeah. Very true. Okay, yes. I think it is important that he has a kind face. Compared to, I think, how, like, Batman would be rendered in this art style, I think he's definitely kind-looking in comparison. So, we've decided that, does this work as a comic?
This is one of my favorite comics ever. It says nothing. Or it says that, what I think it says, which is, not doing anything and talking about it is not equal to doing something about the evils in the world.
How much of that this is one of your favorite comics is like nostalgia that it's one of your first comics?
I would say it's 80% nostalgia, 20% the art and dialogue.
Well, if that isn't like commentary on America, I don't know what is.
Thanks for listening. You can find me, Jack Stewartson, at panelpalspodcast.bsky.social on Bluesky.
And you can find me, Diane Hitchings, on Instagram at @1_little_gremlin.
If you'd like to follow the show, you can do so on Bluesky and Pinksky at panelpalspodcast.bsky.social. All of our links are in the show notes. If you like the show, please rate and review on your podcast provider of choice. Panel Pals is a Jack Stewartson, Diane Hitchens co-production with editing by Jack Stewartson. Our musical theme is found by Stemchamp.